So one of my favorite genres has always been shooters. Shooters, shoot 'em ups, shmups, whatever you want to call them. I tend to usually call them shooters or shoot 'em ups. And I want to start a new series based around shooters that I have. I'm always picking up shooters. I love them. I'll play them for a little while, and then I'll pick up another one and I'll play it. So I have a hard time getting through and beating them. So I figured to start this series to kind of just to dedicate myself to focus on ones, playing all the way through and make sure I knock them out. So what I'm going to be doing is just going through. I'll do a review of the game as I go through it, and then I'll give it a rating, and I'll rank it based upon the console. And then I'll also just do an overall ranking to where I bundle all the rankings together. And my goal is to try to see if I can do maybe one of these every other month. If I get on track, maybe I can do one a month, something like that, and then I'll rotate it in with my other videos. So this will be the first one, and for the first one, I want to go ahead and talk about Raiden Trad on the Sega Genesis. So let's go ahead and get started, guys. Raiden Trad is a vertical scrolling shooter that was released in 1991 on the Sega Genesis. There was not a PAL release for Raiden Trad, but it was released in Japan under the title Raiden Densetsu. The game was published in the US by Micronet and developed by Seibu Keihatsu. This was a small dev team, and the only other game that they developed on the Sega Genesis was Dynamite Duke. Seibu Keihatsu was known primarily for the Raiden series. They developed the first 4 games in the series, being Raiden, Raiden 2, Raiden DX, and Raiden 3. They also either developed or published the Raiden Trad ports on the Super Nintendo, TurboGrafx, and PC Engine. But back to Raiden Trad on the Sega Genesis. This game was based off of the first game in the series titled Raiden, which was released in the arcades in 1990. The port on the Sega Genesis is considered the most faithful port to the arcade, as the Super Nintendo port is not widely liked and is not recommended. And the TurboGrafx PC Engine's port have brighter colors, but have lower resolution, sound quality, and are missing some minor features like bonus stage. However, this port is still solid and would be recommended. So firing up the game on the Genesis, you are presented with absolutely no cutscenes or dialogue. However, in the manual, you are presented with a short story. AD 2090. Suddenly, the world is attacked by aliens from outer space. The world has united forces which fight back fiercely. Top world scientists have analyzed wreckage of enemy planes shut down and created a supersonic firebomb called Raiden. However, since these aircrafts are so technically sophisticated, there is only one pilot in the world who is able to handle it. The Raiden is just about to take off, and the fate of the entire world is now depending on this Raiden. Alright, well that's not really much, but at least it gives you some basic premise of what's going on. Not sure why they couldn't have presented this with a couple of cutscenes, or at least a plain black screen with some text at the very least. What you are presented with is either the option to start the game or go into an options menu. In the options menu, you can select from 3 different difficulty settings: easy, normal, and hard. It is set by default to easy. You also have the option for rapid fire, which is nice, but this is turned off by default. The majority of the time I played the game on the default setting of easy, but I turned the rapid fire on. I found this the most enjoyable experience, as it still offered plenty of challenge, but I also never really felt overwhelmed. To put it into perspective, it took me around 25 plus hours to beat the game using no continues using these settings. The game is comprised of 8 main stages, and a playthrough will take you around 40 minutes to clear those 8 stages. You'll start at stage 1, where you are flying over some farm lakes and mountains. You then have a metropolitan stage, an ocean stage, followed by an ancient ruin stage, and on stage 5 you fly over the enemy fortress under construction on Earth, which I found to be the most difficult stage personally. After stage 5, you launch the Raiden up into space. Stage 6 has you flying over what is named a floating continent, which looks similar to a moon, and then stage 7 is flying through enemy airspace, and finally stage 8 is what appears to be the enemy's home planet, or at least the planet where they are building their fortress. After completing stage 8, the credits will roll without giving you any context, and then after the credits it will drop you into a secret stage, again without any context. And holy crap, this stage is ridiculous. I tried several times but could hardly make it more than a minute into the stage. So most people probably won't be interested in this stage, but if you are a savage at shoot 'em ups, then I'd assume you will find some enjoyment in this challenge. So let's focus on the gameplay a bit. As you play through the game, you will have the option of two different weapon types. The wide shot, which is what you start the game with, and will be the red power-ups that you collect, and then the laser, which is the blue power-ups that you collect. Each time that you collect a power-up, it will increase your weapon's power, which will max out after you collect 8. You can switch weapons at any time by picking up the opposite power-up. By switching, you will not increase your weapon power, it will only switch to the other weapon, at the current power level you are currently at. Alongside your main weapon, you also will be equipped with two different types of missiles. You have nuclear missiles labeled with the M, and homing missiles labeled with the H. These will power up to 4 stages, and switching between the two works similar to how it does with your main weapons. You aren't equipped with missiles by default, so every time you die, you will have to collect a power up before you are equipped with them. Playing through, I mostly preferred using the wide shot as my main weapon and pair that with the homing missiles. The laser could concentrate more damage to a single area from a distance, but if you got up close to an enemy with the wide shot, then I found that it produced the most damage. And while the nuclear missiles produced more damage than that of the homing missiles, they just didn't cover near as much ground. Other items that you will pick up are your standard bombs, which you can equip up to 7 at one time, and these come in handily because, like in most shooters, they would destroy enemies and their bullets. You also have a power item you can come across which instantly maxes out your main weapon and missiles. The only other items you collect are the decorations, which look like medals, and they will increase your score as you pick them up, and when you get to the end of the stage, however many of these you've collected, you'll get a bonus for each of them as well. And you also get bonus for your bombs that you have left over at the end of the stage also. One power-up that they don't include, which I'm extremely happy that they didn't, was a speed power-up. These in many cases can ruin the enjoyment of a shooting game. Games with this mechanic make dying in later stages equivalent to a game over because you can never really recover. That was one of the better aspects about Raiden Trad, was that you could die in later stages, lose all your power-ups, and still recover. You never felt like the game was being unfair, as it was a well-balanced experience. Also on the easy setting, after dying you will have a fairy that will appear in the front of you and drop you a few power-ups, and sometimes you can be lucky enough to receive a power collectible from her, instantly maxing out all your weapons. Dying will however set you back to a checkpoint, which is a feature that I don't like, but on the plus, using continues will put you back at the same checkpoint rather than making you restart the stage over again. The music and sound effects for the game I would say are solid and just a bit above average. It's enough to move the game along and without making you think how bad they are, but at the same time there isn't much variety and all the tracks sound extremely similar, and in some cases they are just reused from stage to stage. So will it be stuck in your head? Probably, but will you be happy that they're stuck in your head? Probably not. Visually the game is a bit above average for a Genesis or Mega Drive game. The graphics and pixels are nice and sharp and crisp, but I felt at times that the color palette that they used was pretty bland. I would have preferred if they went with a slightly brighter palette similar to the TurboGrafx port, but overall, there wasn't much flickering and enemy bullets were easy to identify. Performance-wise, there was a little slowdown, but nothing game-breaking. I mean, it wasn't that often, and when it did happen, I don't feel like it ever caused me to die or irritated me. The game controls extremely well. Your Raiden ship is moderate in speed, but is pretty precise with its movements. The boss battles probably were one of the weaker aspects of the game, as they were pretty forgettable. Like when I look back at this game a few months from now, not a single boss will pop into my mind as being fun or interesting. They were, for the most part, just pretty basic and generic. I really wish they would have spent more time and effort designing better bosses, as it could have escalated this game. So let's break down and see how Raiden Trad ranks against other shoot 'em ups. Gameplay, I gave it a 7, music 6, graphics 6, visuals 7, stage design 7, boss fights 5, controls 7, slowdown 7, enjoyment 8, presentation 4, which gives it a total score of 6. And being that this is the very first video in this series, Raiden Trad by default will land at number 1 on both the overall board and the Sega Genesis board. All in all, I do think this is a very solid game. It's a very approachable game for gamers new to the genre or ones that enjoy the genre but are turned off by some of the more difficult games in it. And with the higher difficulty settings, there is still enough here for more experienced fan of shoot 'em ups as well. It's also a fairly affordable shooter, as currently you can get a loose cart for around or under $30, while with the clamshell or a complete in box will cost you between $50 to $100 depending on the condition. Hope you guys enjoyed the video and the new series. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.